Salerno has to spur every one of his plots ahead at full speed now. He gets his hands on the first round of the forgeries he's commissioned, has Ginevra reach out to Giancarlo Rossi to look into taking out as big a loan as they must to meet the theater's demands. He meets with Matteo Domitis, tells him he may be moving against Lavinius soon, and the legate must have his Socii Legion ready to act. Zeno gets him another meeting with Vitale Octavianus, legate of the Second Legion. He once again tries to make inroads with the hard-assed old warrior. He suggests to Vitale that Lavinius's handlings of the Sephardic invasion was an unmitigated disaster, and that it makes the Empire look weak on the world stage, like they can't stand up to the Sephards. What will happen if Tarathia crushes the Sephards, where the Empire went belly up to them? It will further cement Kassala's image as a once great empire deep in decline. Vitale seems to agree with this sentiment. He's of the opinion that they should just march up the Tyre road right into Tarathia and smash the Sephardic hordes, just to make a point that Kassala doesn't fear any barbarians. It's an angle Salerno hadn't stressed before, relying purely on military pride, using the Sephards as his casus belli, rather than arguing against Lavinius directly. He seems to have Vitale's tentative support, however, so long as he makes good on giving the legions a chance to show their mettle. Antonius Malvoro is of no help to Salerno. The Senate is cowering before Lavinius, each senator hoping he won't be the next to retire. But while he reaches out to senators, Salerno finds himself invited to meet with Fulvia Meridius. He does so briefly, with an escort, in a public place. Fulvia is a snake, and not the Tarathi kind. Even their brief meeting makes Salerno's skin crawl. She tries to butter him up, clearly trying to get him under her thumb. She sees him as a tool with which she can get an edge over Lavinius, because apparently it's not enough for her to work with a corrupt autocrat. She also needs to be scheming about how to betray the corrupt autocrat. Salerno sees through her, and not much comes of the meeting. He also meets again with his allies outside the scope of Castline politics. Duke Diaz, the Steelshod woman, Giancarlo, and Ariste Regulus. He isn't crazy about it, but he strongly commits to helping them if they are willing to help him. He's concerned things are going to explode between him and Lavinius, and he still lacks the manpower. Alejandra agrees, as does Giancarlo. Duke Diaz is a little more cautious. Ariste seems on the fence, but his Legio Serpens are getting restless, so if things come to a head in the streets of Kassala, he may have no choice but to get involved. In the midst of all this preparation, Salerno and Zeno receive a message from Praetor Quintus Lavinius, acting imperator of the Castline Empire. He asks to meet with them privately. He offers to come to them, meeting at the barracks Salerno's legion is currently housed in. This last bit is a rare courtesy, probably intended to assuage concerns of a possible assassination, and to make it politically catastrophic to refuse such a reasonable request. Salerno accepts. This meeting will be the first real, in-depth interaction they have with Lavinius, false pleasantries at a public celebration notwithstanding. Salerno has his men assembled in ceremonial kit for the event. He keeps Gemane and Primus Crassus on hand as personal honor guards for the meeting, has a table prepared, 2 seats for Salerno and Zeno across from True Moor for Lavinius and any guest he may bring, Cesare Barbiere, Fulvia Meridius, or Pontius Corvus. Lavinius arrives with only a single century from one of his Praetorian legions, every man decked out in full regalia. He is personally attended by Pontius Corvus and Pontius's sister Lucrezia, the one trained in Hassadian dervish dancing. Zeno knows not to underestimate these two. The Corvus siblings are undoubtedly the most personally threatening of Lavinius's followers, with magic spells and deceptively deadly swordplay that masquerades as dance. Lavinius sits down and Pontius takes the second seat. Lucrezia stands behind them watching silently. Salerno and Zeno take their own seats, and, finally, the two men truly meet. As a GM, I expected this to be the moment that really kicks off the endgame in Kassala, the run-up to the climactic series of conflicts that either end up really good for Salerno and probably Steelshod, or don't. But I had no idea what was about to happen. Lavinius confronts Salerno directly, asks him point-blank if he really thinks he can stop his rise to power. Salerno replies with similar, brutal honesty. "I think you are a duplicitous man that craves only power," Salerno says. Lavinius smiles a little at that. "And what do you crave? Castline supremacy? A return to our position as a world power?" Salerno nods, since it's well known that this is exactly what he wants. "And how will we get that, Artaxes? By ceding control of our great empire to a flaccid, meek senate? A senate that time and time again rolls belly up to our Tarathian overlords at the slightest challenge?" "The Republic, the Senate, is what makes Kassala great," Salerno says. "It is a matter of principle. I wish for us to be great, Quintus, and if we betray our values, our principles, then we will not be great. Not even if you manage to conquer a few lost territories. A republic is for times of peace, Artaxes. A fat and indolent senate can serve the people fine when all it has to concern itself with is taxes, farmers, and trade disputes. But we live in a time of iron and fire. War is upon us, and we need a warrior." "And you consider yourself a warrior?" Salerno scoffs. "Vitale Octavianus calls you a politician." Lavinius smiles. "He calls you the same. I am a politician, yes, and a warrior. You are much the same, I think. It takes both to rule an empire." Salerno has to concede that one. "I am not a madman," Lavinius says. "I remember the history books, the wars for succession that often followed the death of an emperor. I will restore the Senate before my reign ends, and retire when an emperor is no longer needed, on my deathbed or sooner." "Reassuring," Salerno murmurs. Lavinius changes the subject, but keeps with his theme of shocking forthrightness. "You are trying to have me assassinated," he observes. Salerno clenches his teeth, nods. "I am doing the same, of course, as you know." Lavinius continues. Salerno nods again. "Terribly expensive business. Those funds could be better spent on other pursuits, don't you think?" "I must agree," Salerno says. Lavinius leans back in his seat, a smirk on his lips. "Indeed. Can we agree on that, at least? Cessation of our contracts. We call off this theater nonsense." Salerno nods cautiously, wondering how much he can drive down drama's price if Lavinius withdraws from the bidding war. Lavinius bursts into sudden laughter. "Oh, gods, that won't work. Now we'll both just try to pick the talks back up behind the other's back." The obviously true observation makes Salerno wince. "We must resolve this dispute soon, then, or one of us will find themselves with one less problem, but the new problem of owing far too much money to a group too dangerous to think of reneging on." Salerno is clearly deep in thought now, and what he says next is the thing that shocks the hell out of me. "Quintus," he says, "I have become the starkest representation of those that oppose your bid to become emperor, see?" Lavinius nods. "Of course. And you seem to have done well enough at gathering those of like minds to you." "I wonder," Salerno says, "what would it be worth to you if that opposition were to go away?" Lavinius arches an eyebrow. "Say again?" "I am your most public and vocal opposition. If I were to change my mind just as publicly, I suspect many of your detractors would reevaluate your merits. What would that be worth to you?" Zeno struggles to stay unreadable, but for a moment he looks at Salerno as if he has grown a second head. Lavinius doesn't even bother hiding his incredulity. "Are you asking me to bribe you? Cesare and Fulvia already tried, did they not?" "They are crass, slimy schemers. Not worth my time. What did they have to offer but gold and empty promises?" "You don't wish for gold, then?" Lavinius says. Salerno gives Lavinius a withering look of scorn. Lavinius raises his hand in a placating gesture. "Understood. It did seem incongruous from all I knew of you. So what exactly are you asking for?" Salerno sits up a little straighter in his chair. "Power. The power to help Kassala specifically. To help you help Kassala." "So, you have changed your mind now?" I'm not such a duplicitous snake after all. Salerno shakes his head. I have no love for you, but if we continue this struggle, the Empire will be worse off for it. In a time like this, we cannot afford that weakness. So I will ally myself with you because perhaps you are right. Perhaps Kassala needs an emperor. For a little while. So you will support my bid, and you think you can bring over your own factions to our cause? Some of them, yes. Decima, yes. Matteo Domitus. Matteo is mine already, Lavinius interrupts. Salerno gives the praetor an arch look. Besides, Lavinius Pontus Corvus clears his throat. Quintith, he murmured, I was going to tell you sooner, but... Lavinius frowns, waves a hand dismissively at his sorcerer. As I was saying, I can likely bring you Vitale Octavianus as well. You have Vitale too? Surely not. Do you want the list or don't you? Salerno asks. Quintus nods. Very well. Decius Crispus would be harder, but you've dealt with him already, and there are a few senators still remaining that I may not be able to persuade. I want their names. Your allies become mine or they are taken out of the question, Lavinius says. Salerno nods. You'll have their names then. I think I can even solve your significant popularity gap with the Tarathi faithful of the Empire, and with this Legio Serpens as well. Oh, then you have more sway than I would have credited you. How? Simple. It's all part of my request. I take it you're interested then? Lavinius grins. Quite. What's your price then? How can I buy Caecilius Artaxes? You will be emperor. That will leave a gap in your previous position. I will fill it. Make me praetor, and I am yours. Lavinius falls silent, considering this proposal for several long minutes. I had promised that position to Cesare, he says. A soft, gluttonous worm, Salerno says. I am, as you said, a politician, yes, but also a warrior. The praetorship of all positions needs a man of conviction, of iron will and ruthlessness. Well said, Lavinius nods. That is what you require, then? Make you praetor, and you will ensure that I am made emperor? As long as I am praetor in truth, and not just in name. The legions, I will have some degree of freedom in their management. I may answer you, but I will not be your lackey. That is acceptable, Lavinius agrees. The legions, do you have something in mind for them already? Salerno nods. I told you. I will need to help you win over the Tarathi faithful, so I will dispatch several legions to escort the Legio Serpens and the Spitalian mercenary army north. Lavinius frowns. North? To oppose the Sfards? Aid Tarathia? Why? To win the Tarathi faithful back to your side, for one, Salerno says. To prove to the world that we do not fear northern barbarians. For the sake of the gods, man, you're still sending them supplies. We will do it to prove to Tarathia that we are as mighty as they are. No, mightier, that we can come to their aid against a foreign threat. And we will assert ourselves on the world stage as a power, and take a strong bargaining position with Tarathia and our other neighbors. Lavinius considers this. And what of the legions already there? And Secapus? The legions I will recall. Secapus, he was a great man once, but he has chosen his allegiance, and it is not the Empire. Lavinius considers this for a while. They hash out a few more details, but he accepts. It's a good offer, and never in a million years an offer I ever expected to see made. The rest of the Castilian campaign is an anticlimax. It passes in a rush. No big fight with Pontius Corvus and his alchemy, no fight with Lucrezia and her dozen tiers of badass dervish swordplay. Salerno gets his allies on Lavinius' side. He even turns on his wife's old friend Antonius Malvoro, and gets the poor senator imprisoned for plotting against Lavinius. Zeno is pretty flabbergasted by all this. There's one memorable moment, in the Senate, when Lavinius is being officially named emperor and Salerno praetor. Zeno is in a gallery overlooking the ceremony, sitting next to Pontius Corvus, and he seriously considers knifing Corvus. It'd work. Corvus is not physically imposing, and throwing Corvus's poison gas alchemy down onto the Senate floor, killing Lavinius and Salerno both. But he decides against it. Zeno slowly comes around when Salerno tells him in private that he still intends to bring Lavinius down, but he had to alleviate the immediacy of the conflict, because it was going to be too harmful to Kassala as a whole. Now that he is praetor, he will be well positioned to secure more control over the legions, and eventually, he will have it out with Lavinius for real. Meanwhile, Salerno selects several legions, including Matteo, Decima, Vitale, and a couple of the Praetorian legions, and he begins marching north, along with the Legio Serpens, Duke Diaz's army, and Alejandra and her Steelshod. Now there's only one question that remains. Will they get to Nahash in time to make a difference? Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.